Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another round of Basis Picks. Now, as you can see, I'm not in my usual dwellings. I'm actually out of town at the moment, but as always, the show must go on. I've been a bit inconsistent recently, so the content's got to make its way out. So I brought all my equipment with me, and normally I wait for weigh-ins and stuff to do these predictions, but I'm pretty certain about all the predictions I got this weekend. So with that being said, let's get straight into it, and I'm gonna start with the Wasserman card that's taking place tomorrow night on Channel 5. So look, ultimately, there's only 2 fights on this card I've got any kind of knowledge of. So if anyone was hoping for maybe a bit more of the undercard, I apologize. I don't really know too much of the guys. I know Lyndon Arthur, and to a lesser extent, I know a bit of Joe McIntyre, who I think he stopped Chad Sugden in his last fight, which was a decent win, to be honest. I mean, Chad's kind of been around the block a little bit at the moment, but you know, a win's a win at the end of the day. Momentum's momentum, especially in sort of like the lower weights and the lower scales. Not lower weights, you know what I mean, but sort of like lower leagues of the weights is what I should say. Now, Lyndon has rebounded off of his he's had one fight, because the second one was supposed to be on the Conor Benn fight, which got called off. Yeah, so he's had one fight back, I think, since the Anthony Yard fight. So this will be his second. It should have been his third, but he's getting his activity back in, looking for a big 2023. Now, look, long story short, Lyndon Arthur is about at least 2 levels above Joe McIntyre. And as much as McIntyre could catch him with a lucky punch, that's pretty much the only way he's going to be able to win this fight. He's not going to be able to outbox Lyndon. Lyndon is too skilled with the jab, too good at controlling distance, just being sort of that pure boxer. Joe McIntyre is a bit more of like a sort of a boxer puncher. So Lyndon stylistically has got that advantage over him. He's not going to allow himself to really get wound into any major situations. The only thing deciding this is whether or not this goes points or whether Lyndon gets the stoppage. Now, I actually do think that he's going to control it from long range, sort of the first 5 rounds, 4 to 5 rounds. And then after that, he's going to start to apply a bit of pressure and start to let the backhand fly a little bit more, you know, sort of after getting his distance, you know, sort of feeling what Joe McIntyre's got in the locker. And ultimately at that point, I think between rounds 7 and 8 is when I can see this fight getting stopped. Now, Lyndon could be the total opposite and just decide that he wants the rounds to set him up for next year and just box safely to a decision, but I really think the stoppage is coming sort of around 7 to 8. So that's my prediction for the first fight. And then ultimately, after that, you got Troy Williamson versus Josh Kelly. Now, this fight's been spoken about for God knows how long. They are fighting at super welterweight, so 154. Now, with this fight, I haven't seen any of Josh Kelly's comeback, to be totally honest. So I can't 100% tell you what he's worked on and what he's improved on, if he's improved on anything. What I do know is that in terms of punch power, Troy Williamson has that over him. And Troy Williamson's actually a pretty good boxer as well. But in his last couple of fights that I've seen, he's looked a bit shaky around the whiskers, maybe not making the weight well, or possibly just, you know, maybe not having the punch resistance that I thought he might have. So Josh Kelly has got enough athleticism to make this a sort of a very awkward and stylistically very bad matchup for Troy Williamson. And if he could box to his game plan for the full, is it a 10 round or 12 rounds, whichever one it is, if he could box to the game plan, I could see him quite easily outpointing Troy Williamson, just due to some of his natural gifts and athleticism. However, I do think that Troy Williamson ultimately is going to be able to cut off exit points for Josh Kelly in this fight. He's going to be able to sort of get him downstairs to the body, stop his movement, trap him in corners at times, and sort of, you know, land hard shots on him that even if Kelly's bracing for them, you know, they're going to take their toll. Now, I don't know if this fight ends in a stoppage. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it does. But I think that through sheer aggression and work rate, and possibly just a little bit of strength as well. I actually think Troy Williamson will take this fight. I think he's going to take it on points, on a majority or unanimous decision. So my prediction, ultimately, I think Troy Williamson is gonna take it to Josh Kelly, and I think he's gonna get him on points. I mean, look, stoppage could happen, but points is how I see it ending. All right, so from there, I guess we move on to the big card at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, right? Right, so a fight that I'm actually really sort of keen to have a look at. I won't be seeing it live, I won't be around at the time, but I'll definitely watch it back, is Yvonne Mendy versus Denis Berinchyk. Now, look, on the undercard of a pay-per-view event that is as high as it is, you know, it's not the worst of fights, but it definitely isn't sort of a third from main type contest either. That being said, look, Berinchyk was on that very strong Ukrainian Olympic team from the 2012 Olympics. I think he turned over pro in 2014. So he's been pro about 8 years now. He's only had 16 fights. 9 of those have been KOs, but he's done a lot of other things throughout his time as well. He's been on things like Dancing with the Stars in Ukraine. He's even done bare knuckle boxing, where he stopped Artem Lobos. So he's been active. He's never had like huge periods of inactivity outside the ring, but he also hasn't really faced the greatest of the greatest opponents either. But technically and skill-wise, he's very composed, and he's very assured. And he obviously comes from the same school of training as Alexander Usyk, you know, Vasily Lomachenko, Vosdik as well, you know, and sort of just that era. So what I will say is Yvonne Mendy is a very tough opponent. He will step forward, he will bring the fight. He's never been stopped before, even in the 5 losses he's had. You know, he's been hurt in a couple fights, but he's always had good powers of recovery, and he's just very, very tough. But at the age of 37, even though obviously Berinchyk ain't no spring chicken himself, being 34, I just think Berinchyk going to be a bit too fresh for him. Hasn't really taken a lot of damage. He had, you know, significant amount of amateur bouts, but not you know, in the 400 ranges, and he hasn't had a huge amount of pro fights either. So he's still kind of going to be fresh. So I ultimately think that he's going to employ a lot of movement and front foot pressure. He's going to land that backhand quite a bit in this fight, and I do actually see this being Yvonne Mendy's first stoppage loss, and that European title going over to Denis Berinchyk. So I'm predicting a stoppage. If it's not a stoppage, it's a UD, you know, throughout. But yes, definitely I've got a stoppage on the cards. It will be a shame for Yvonne Mendy sort of to go out that way, but I think Denis Berincyk's kind of got his number on this one. Now, moving to the co-main of that event, you got Daniel Dubois versus Kevin Lerena. Now, do you know what? This is actually not a bad fight. I know a lot of people don't know who Kevin Lerena is, but he's spent the majority of his career as a cruiserweight. He's come up to heavyweight in 2020. I think it's the end of 2020 or the start of 2021. I think he's had 3 fights at heavyweight, and currently is sitting around 230 pounds-ish. So he's fully embedded himself into the heavyweight, sort of, you know, into his heavyweight frame. He's not going to be able to make cruiserweight again. Now look, he's had a fight against Bogdan Dinu, who ultimately Daniel Dubois fought as well, so you can't really say much about that particularly. He's also faced Mariusz Vach, and he actually had Mariusz Vach on the floor a couple times in that fight as well. So anyone who knows the game, Mariusz Vach, yes, very long in the tooth, but extremely strong, extremely durable. So you know that to put him down and to, you know, sort of have that kind of dominance over him means that you got something about you. Now look, he hasn't got the greatest puncher power. He's a 50% knockout rate. He's 28, I think he's 28-0 with 14 KOs. So, you know, not the biggest puncher, but, you know, respectable enough. Plus he's southpaw with fairly good head movement, decent feet and fairly quick hands. So realistically, if anything, this is a fight to try and prep Daniel Dubois for a potential Usyk fight down the line. And the matchmaking, I actually don't have a problem with. Now, I think Daniel is going to have a lot of problems early in this fight, if I'm being honest. Just reading the movement, reading the, you know, that southpaw stance is not really something that he sort of encounters on a regular basis, and because he's sort of even though he's getting a bit looser with his body mechanics, he's sort of very stiff and robotic in his movements. I think Lorena might be able to take advantage of that early on. Now, this is one of those fights where if Daniel doesn't catch him with something within the first 2 to 3 rounds, I see this fight going late. Now, I do think Daniel will eventually catch up to him and land enough stuff that makes Lorena, sort of at least back off or retreat into a bit more of a shell to allow Daniel a bit more aggression on top. But ultimately, yeah, if Daniel doesn't catch him in the first 2 to 3 rounds and take him out in 3, then I see this fight going like round 10, 11, and maybe Daniel sort of getting him out there. So I do think he will get the stoppage, but I think it will be late. If he doesn't catch him extremely early and extremely cold. But Kevin Lorena is a good opponent for Daniel Dubois, and I've got no issues with that opponent. But my prediction is Daniel Dubois stoppage late, around sort of rounds 10 to 11, and it will be a good learning fight for him moving forward. All right, now moving on to the big trilogy on the Matchroom card. Okay, so on the Matchroom card, I'm actually looking forward again to seeing Beatriz Ferreira in action. I really enjoyed her pro debut. She did 3-minute rounds. She did a 4-rounder, 3-minute rounds. One of the few women, I should say, that's doing 3-minute rounds. I hope this bout is also over 3 minutes, but this is a 6-rounder. And against Carice Brown. Now, I've seen one fight of Carice Brown. She's all right, nothing special, but American, she's tough as well. She's lost a couple fights, but she's game. She tries to bring the pressure. However, if this is 6 3-minute rounds, I'm actually predicting Beatriz Ferreira to actually get the KO, because she was just mere seconds away from getting the KO in the 4-rounder with the 3 minutes, putting down Cardoso, putting her down several times in the fight. I think it was 3 times she ended up dropping her in the 4 rounds. So all it would have taken was 1 more round, she would have got her out of there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to her. Diego Pacheco's on the card, Mark Castro, I'm expecting to see pretty good performances from them. I think Ammo Williams is also on the card, so I'm not too sure on his opponent, so I don't really want to speak too much about that, but I'm expecting him obviously to step up and kind of do the business as well. Ultimately, we go to the co-main, which is Julio Cesar Martinez, versus Samuel. Is it Carmona? Yeah, Samuel Carmona. Obviously, he's taken the place of McWilliams Arroyo, who pulled out, I think, two or 3 weeks ago now. So it's a bit of a last-minute replacement, so to speak. But with Martinez, he seems to do a lot better against opponents that he doesn't have notice for than the ones that he has actually the training camps for. That's what it kind of looks like as of late. So what I kind of see happening here is him getting for a lack of a better phrase, fiddled about in the first few rounds against Carmona, sort of moving, just trying to sort of stick on that outside, just being that pure boxer, just not trying to take too many chances, and sort of trying to safety first, win points on the back foot, with Martinez sort of trying to step in and, sort of break him down bit by bit, trying to come in, swing wild shots as he does from time to time, connect with a few things as well. But I feel like that fight ultimately is going to end in a Julio Cesar Martinez KO sort of around the mid-round. So I'm thinking around sort of 6 or 7. I feel like he'll kind of get to Carmona from about round 4. And at that point, Carmona might either go into a shell, or he might try and trade up with Martinez, and that's what Martinez ultimately wants. And we see that in the fight with Chocolatito. Chocolatito is very heavy-handed and very much powerful in his punches, even though he doesn't load up on them. But Martinez ate pretty much everything that he had. So if he could do that with him, I don't see him being afraid of anything that Carmona is going to throw at him. So at that point, I think he'll literally walk him down with the high guard, dig to the body, swing wild shots to the head, and ultimately, take him out around sort of 6 to 7. Now, the trilogy of the weekend. Juan Francisco Estrada versus Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, 3. Now, I, like many people, think that Chocolatito was screwed in the second fight that they had. To me, there was absolutely no way that Estrada won that. I had it 116, 112 Gonzalez. I've watched the fight numerous times. It was one of my favorite fights of 2020, and my opinion hasn't changed. It's every time I watch it, I just don't understand how Estrada got that outside of politics. But looking at Estrada in his last fight, because remember this fight was supposed to happen start of the year, and then he said he was complaining about COVID, long COVID symptoms. I think it was supposed to happen last year. Then he had the COVID, then he came back at the start of the year, was complaining about long COVID symptoms, which is why Bam Rodriguez ended up fighting Quadras. And then, so he had his comeback fight back in September, which was supposed to be just a shaking the ring rust type fight. He ended up going life and death with the opponent, whose name escapes me right now, apologies. But what I did see was that he didn't necessarily look great. He didn't particularly look great in the second Chocolatito fight. He didn't look great in his comeback fight. And outside of that, he's only had, 10-11 weeks since then to get into camp and to come to this fight here. So I don't particularly think that he is going to be in the best possible shape, and whatever those long COVID symptoms may have been, I don't see him being able to get a dodgy decision on the scorecards this time, because I think Chocolatito stops him. I think he wears him down, he walks him down, he's going to make him throw all his weight behind his shots like he usually does, but he's going to, be able to tuck up, avoid slip and roll most of them, just like he did in the second fight, like he done in their first fight. And I don't think Estrada's going to have the same kind of gas tank that he had prior to the COVID afflictions. And I just think Chocolatito's going to wear him down, hit him with loads of shots, accumulative. He's just going to hit him body head, and I think that he's going to force Estrada to either quit or he's going to get knocked out. I feel like the best possible result for him will be the corner throwing in the towel before it's too late. But my prediction is I think the Chocolatito knocks him out. Now, I could be totally wrong, but the only thing that I'm 100% sure of is that Chocolatito wins this fight, barring a freak accident or, like a brown paper bag put in someone's lap, or, a wire transfer in someone's account. Chocolatito wins this fight handily, and that's my prediction. Now, you might be wondering why I'm not speaking about the other trilogy that is taking place this weekend. I don't care about it. No, I can't put any more emphasis into it than that. I don't care about it. To a degree, if this is my protest, if that's how you want to look at it, cool, it's my protest. It does nothing for me. I won't be watching it live. I may not even watch it post-fight, only if I'm told I have to for the show on Tuesday. Outside of that, I don't care. Regardless of how fun it may end up being, but we'll see. Like I said, if I've got to do it for duty purposes, cool, but I don't care enough about it, and ultimately I think everyone knows how that's supposed to play out. So yeah, anyway, look, leave your predictions down below, let me know what you kind of think. Thank you for watching, and as always, Spaces Picks locked.